It's safe to say the simmering feud between conservative powerhouses Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin has reached its boiling point.
Carlson ignited the latest exchange after writing a lengthy X post targeted at Levin. Carlson accused Levin of lobbying for war with Iran and hyperventilating about weapons of mass destruction in Iran. He continued, quote, "The one thing that people like Mark Levin don't want is a peaceful solution to the problem of Iran, despite the obvious benefits to the United States. They denounce anyone who advocates for a deal as a traitor and a bigot. They tell us with a straight face that Long Island native Steve Witkoff is a secret tool of Islamic monarchies. They'll say or do whatever it takes. They have no limits. These are scary people. Pray that Donald Trump ignores them."
Of course, Levin hit back. He wrote on X, "He burps again." Yes, I know, Carlson has become a loathsome who's increasingly unhinged and pathetic. Our nation's enemies love him, as do certain vile and weird conspiracy theorists he promotes. After Levin called Carlson barely literate and utterly incoherent, he ended his post with, "But the good news is, the more he talks and writes, the less relevant and more poisonous he becomes." So Amber, you're in the Conservative seat. You have a greater knowledge of these people than I do, to the point of clarifying something which I always get wrong, which is the pronunciation of Mark Levin's last name. But what do you think of this intra-conservative battle?
Yeah, I think not super surprising. Mark Levin has been a very aggressively pro-Israel Zionist voice in the conservative movement and is generally much more hawkish than sort of the new right, more anti-interventionist wing of the party, which Tucker Carlson is a part of. He's very skeptical of new wars. He wants peace in the Middle East, at least through the attempt to negotiate some kind of deal with Iran. He is not overly supportive of the U.S.'s alignment with Israel, in the sense that he doesn't want endless funding of Israel. He would like them to be independent if possible. Not a huge fan of Palestine and Hamas either, but recognizes the need for negotiation in these conflicts. Whereas Levin has been very vocal on his social media and allegedly in lobbying to the White House that they should side with Israel and have some kind of military action against Iran, which I think broadly the Republican Party has signaled deep skepticism toward.
Yeah, and I think rightly so. Levin's stance on this is very akin to the stance of John Bolton, who seems to have wanted to attack Iran for pretty much my lifetime, as far as I can tell, you know.
He never met a war he didn't like.
He really hasn't, and particularly he has constant pretexts that would justify an attack on Iran. And I do think here, you know, Tucker Carlson, I disagree with on 99 things out of 100, but I think that he makes a very legitimate point about excessive belligerence and bellicosity and the dangers of those things. Just on a broader point about the Israel and the Palestinians question, I have been interested, Amber, my views on that conflict are fairly familiar to viewers of this show, but it's interesting to me not only the kind of Tucker Carlsons of the world, but I saw recently Theo Vaughn give a very sort of emotional reaction where he made clear that he did not consider himself some policy expert on the Middle East, but that he had massive problems just on a human level about what's happening there. And I think that the breaking down of a sort of rigid ideological line on that situation is welcome.
I think a huge part of it is the sort of decaying grip of the evangelicals on the Republican Party in terms of foreign policy. A lot of the explanation for America's undying loyalty to Israel has been from that group because of their belief in the Third Temple and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You now have a greater Catholic contingent in the Republican Party. You have a lot more secular people in the Republican Party who don't have that underlying religious reason for support of Israel and are looking at this through the lens of, well, how does this benefit America's interest rather than my personal religious interest? And they can't come up with a really great explanation for why that is. I mean, sure, Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, ostensibly. They've provided intelligence services to the United States. But at the same time, they've seen Israel wanting to prolong this war as long as possible. They've seen Israel being actually a hindrance in hostage negotiations, as well as this very aggressive stance towards Iran as Trump is trying to make a deal. And they don't feel like Israel is posturing with the policies or the proposals that would be best suited to keeping the United States safe. And so they want to sort of reposition the way that the U.S. engages with Israel writ large.
No, I think those are all great points, and I think it was last week you and I were also talking about Benjamin Netanyahu's kind of personal and selfish motivations to keep that conflict going for electoral reasons, and also because he's under investigation, well, charged in fact with corruption. More broadly, Amber, I mean, I certainly cede to your expertise about the conservative movement generally, but I wonder how the experiences of Iraq and Afghanistan played into all of this,
role.
you know, because I mean, I remember when Trump first ran, first time around, him being critical of George W. Bush, and lots of people in the chattering classes, for want of a better term, were like, oh, it's all over, you can't be a Republican candidate for president and criticize Bush or criticize militarism, you know, and in fact, that obviously was not how it turned out.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're starting to see the age groups that support the Republican Party moving to younger demographics, because people who were young when the U.S. first invaded Afghanistan or started that war post 9/11, having grown up, some of them joined the military and still involved in that conflict. Watching their parents come home, that all played a huge role in their deep skepticism towards the old nation building of the neoconservatives. And that has been effectively blown up by the Trump coalition. And you see a lot more older generations of Americans still being very supportive of Israel, still being generally more hawkish than the new element of the party. So I do think that plays a huge role in this shift that we've seen.
Right, and without wanting to overstate similarities between the parties, it does seem to me that because older people tend to be much more represented in the ranks of elected officials, shall we say, that in Congress, both the neocon constituency of the Republican Party and a more sort of reflexively pro-Israel and sometimes liberal interventionist element of the Democratic Party have more of a hold on on Capitol Hill than in fact those views have among the base of either party's supporters.
Yeah, and I think we saw the same with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Congress broadly supportive of continuing aid, whereas some of the younger members of Congress and then the American people having increased skepticism of that over time as the conflict went on.
Sure, I think that's very fair.
All right, we have a lot more topics to talk about on Rising. Stay tuned after this.